This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Morning Coffee with the Young Panda. My name is the Young Panda. I'm coming to you today from the inside of my new house. Yeah, that's right. We got it. We got it all figured out. We're moved in for the most part. There's still some shit at our old apartment that we need to go pick up, but we are in, and that's pretty sweet. It was a long, annoying process, but we are here. And this house is being paid for by all of the time, money, and effort that I did not put into this YouTube channel. So, thank you all for being so patient while I figured out how to make it a living and get a new house. But it was all in service of this. It was all in service of having a room dedicated to making young pandas. And now I have that. I have a second bedroom that will be used as a guest bedroom that I can just jump in and start recording stuff. Before, my desk was inside of my bedroom, the master bedroom of the apartment that me and my wife were both sleeping in. So I couldn't exactly just record whenever I want to. Now, she's in the other room asleep, and I am in this bedroom sipping a delicious cup of Newman's Own Keurig coffee from my Steven Universe mug, because I am gay. I love Steven Universe so much. We're not talking about that today, though. We're talking about a film and a Netflix television show. First off, I'll jump into Antlers, which I'm gonna do a quick little thing on, and then I'm gonna jump into spoilers. Count this as spoilers for the whole video, because I really don't think that anyone should go into Midnight Mass knowing anything. You should really just jump in blind. It's one of those. You know. Where's it going? I'll let you know. But if you don't want to know, just hang tight. Don't hang tight. Leave. If you don't want to know, then leave. Quick synopsis on my opinions of Antlers. Every generation of horror movies has cheap imitators of the style that don't want to put as much personal, emotional investment into the actual creation of the film and just want to make as much money as they can and cash out. The 80s slasher movie had billions of imitators. Like, it was absurd. Even recently, the Conjuring Insidious style has had its cheap imitators like Wish Upon and The Bye Bye Man. Just an attempt to take the popular formula that a couple of other movies used to make a shitload of money and then kind of emulating those style elements, but with a far less inspired story, simply to generate as much revenue as possible. Antlers is an attempt to do that with an A24 film. So you have the style and like pseudo underlying meaning and deep emotional themes, but all of it is done with a million times less subtlety, nuance, and inspiration. I didn't hate this film. I didn't like it. It's a solid like 5 out of 10. Like, not necessarily bad. I was entertained throughout, but it's sort of got the juvenile interests of being a creepy, spooky monster movie, and then having all these deeper themes about abuse and nature versus man and all that kind of stuff sort of pushed in there without much thought or care. But underneath what is actually would be a sort of interesting monster movie, but it would be completely forgettable. But in the ways that it succeeded in its own intentions, its true intentions, which was to just be a horror movie. it did okay. It wasn't great, but I can't find myself getting angry with it at all. It's just an interesting take between these two different motivations. Fun horror movie and thought-provoking, creepy A24 film. It's one of those movies that has the structure of just slowly getting the drip feed of information where everything is going to make sense at the end. You start off and there's a creepy kid who looks definitely like abused. Carrie Russell is a teacher who is abused, but then who was abused when she was a kid. She's not actively being abused. She's like being taken care of sort of by her cop brother, played by Jesse Plemons, who I just love. His whole thing is very stoic, non-expressive sort of acting. It's his whole thing is being Todd from Breaking Bad, just stoic and silent. I mean, I guess it works. He does a good job. He fits most of the characters he plays. It's just, it's sort of like a Joaquin Phoenix thing where if he's involved, you're pretty sure it's like a stamp of quality. They wouldn't do something that they didn't think was at least pretty good in terms of like a script. So I saw that. I saw he was in it and I was like, oh, okay, maybe this could be interesting. I haven't really heard much talk about it, but whatever. Anyways, this creepy kid that they're showing, he has someone living in his house as sort of like a prisoner who's trapped behind a door that's got a lock on it. It's like, okay, what is happening? The very first scene is this dude breaking into, no, he's a meth dealer, and they're inside an abandoned building, and then they look over their shoulder, and then there's a creepy thing with antlers, and it kills them, and you're like, oh, okay, and then the movie starts. That man, the meth head man, has a kid with him, and you learn later that, well, okay, hold on real quick. let's just say spoilers. I will say I wouldn't necessarily recommend the film, but I wouldn't recommend it as a stamp of quality thing. But if you're just, wanted to throw on a horror movie real quick while you're on your phone and just kind of glancing in the background, it's serviceable. It's better than a lot of stuff that's out there. And you might enjoy it a little more than I did, because I found that there's a lot of themes that, I'll get into this a little later, but there's a lot of themes that it's going for that I don't really feel like it properly blended very well. All the themes seem sort of just stacked on top of each other without a lot of care. Again, it feels sort of slapdash, but towards the end there is a lot of fun monster stuff that I genuinely liked, and I think it was fun. So if you can get past all of the attempts to be smarter than it actually was, I think there's some fun to be had with it. But anyways, I'm gonna spoil it now, so make your decision. Just to get directly into what was actually happening with the story, this meth head guy is attacked by a Wendigo from Native American legend, I think. That's how the movie explained it, at least. There is a single Native American cop who has, I think, 2 scenes total. The first scene is early in the movie when they're investigating, and then they find medicine bags all around the crime scene. Jesse Plemons looks at the Native American guy and he said, ooh, these are medicine bags. They keep away evil spirits. And it was like, oh, okay. So I guess it's evil spirits, but also I guess it's Native American. That guy leaves the movie for an hour of this 1.5 hour long movie. And then when they start picking up what's going on, they go talk to him again in his trailer. I think he's living in a trailer. I don't know why. That's just, maybe it felt appropriate. You get information from a guy in a trailer. Whatever. He says, that's a Wendigo. You're looking at, they bring him an antler, and they're like, I've never seen an antler like this before. First off, like, how many antler variations are there? And you're just positive you've never seen, anyways. He takes the antler and he's like, there's only one thing that this antler could be from, and that's a Wendigo, a mythical antlered creature that feeds off of humans. And I'm not sure if this is a part of the legend, but The dad has sort of the spirit of the Wendigo inside him, but it's not a fun thing. It's horrible because it's slowly kind of converting him into a Wendigo monster. So the whole movie, you're kind of cutting back between Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons sort of investigating the situation and trying to figure out what's going on. And then the kid caring for this man in his house, and you slowly figure out, like, okay, something's really wrong with him. At first, you think the kid's like a sinister murderer type, and then it kind of it unveils, like, oh, he's taking care of his sickly father, who is converting into this monster. And at the very end, you learn through flashback, which is, I hate when they do that. I really hate when they just give you, here's what happened in flashback, and it wasn't set up. No one discovered what happened. No one, like, through investigation or detective work, figured it out. It was just kind of like plopped into the plot line. Okay, and then here's the information you didn't have, and now it's a movie. Now it's happening. What actually happened in the flashback was you realized that the father was attacked in his meth room, doing meth drugs, making meth drug, and the monster breaks in. I don't know why. Don't know how. He like busts in. And also he was living in the warehouse, but the warehouse was surrounded by medicine bags. Was he trapped because of the medicine bags? And then the meth head guys fucked it up. Not explained. Wendigo comes out and attacks them, and then the father gets the spirit of the Wendigo inside him. He comes home and tells his kids, hey, something fucked up is happening to me, and I have the urge to, like, eat people, so why don't you lock me in this room, and then as I slowly convert into a monster, you can make sure I don't get out, because you're a child. And I am a soon-to-be monster, definitely. It's pretty stupid saying that out loud, but yeah, that was the story. But as I was saying before, this is totally just sort of dropped on the audience without care, without any leading into it, just because we were at the beginning of the third act and we needed more context. This structure of the drip feed, because you essentially have two investigating presences. The first one being Kerry Russell, the teacher, who's initially seeing what's going on with the creepy kid, and she's immediately like, oh, this kid is a victim of abuse. He's malnourished, he's drawing scary drawings, which is just like the textbook, like, something's wrong with this kid. He drew a spooky face. I have a little brother, and he when he was a kid, he was sort of let on YouTube a little too early, maybe, perhaps, and he got really into creepypastas. Like, he was like a 7-year-old, and he was like really into like Slender Man and like Jeff the Killer, all that stupid stuff. I mean, but it was, I talked about it with him so much. I was like, why do you like that stuff? And he's like, I don't know, it's just interesting. I hope he's not horribly screwed up, but he just was into like the kind of spooky vibes. And then he would draw pictures that in a horror movie would tell you, like, okay, so this kid is damaged. Like, there was one time, it's my favorite thing ever. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, whatever. There was a school, there was a class drawing they had to do of, like, draw a garden, put a pretty flower in it. And he put a body in the ground. Oh my God. And they hung everything up on the walls. And I didn't even have to read the name when I saw the garden that had the body in it. I was like, that's my brother's. I knew immediately which one it was. But anyways, my brother is fine. He's doing okay now. He has yet to become a creepy murderer. He's just a skateboardy guy who watches horror movies with me all the time. He's fine. He is not going through a horrible trauma, but horror movie writers seem to disagree about what that could mean. Anyways, you draw a creepy picture, you're a person of concern. And you know what? No one even like tried to talk to us about it. I think actual teachers might know, like, hey, it's just a kid that likes creepy stuff. He's into creepy stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean he's being abused or attacked. No one ever talked to us about it. Maybe that's a thing that actually teachers are aware of. Whatever. In the movie, he actually he can't read. The kid can't read. So he's drawing a picture of a story because it was story time at the school. And he draws this horrible, like scary, like all black scratched crayon drawing of a bear monster and his two kids. And then the bear is slowly like becoming more evil. and the story is basically like just a perfect retelling of what's going on. Like the bear left and then came back and he was angry, and then the kids were scared, but then the bear put himself into a cave and the kids were left alone. And Carrie Russell was like, "Oh no, what's happening?" And I'm like, okay, that's I mean, it's very literally what is happening, probably. It's a little too obvious. So Carrie Russell was abused as a child by her father, and she notices this kid who's showing, he's drawing a story about how his father is abusive. He's all skinny and malnourished, and other kids beat him up, and he's like, oh yeah, she's like, this kid needs to be helped. So she's the investigating presence for part of the movie, and then bodies start turning up, like horribly mangled bodies. And then the investigating presence turns from Carrie Russell to Jesse Plemons. Once it's him hunting this monster that is murdering people, the whole story and its themes sort of shift. It gets away from the whole abuse angle, and it just becomes about investigating this supernatural horror thing. And for a minute, that was the stuff I was kind of the most interested in, that like middle chunk, where it's Jesse Plemons, like they're finding bodies that are not just dead, but like ripped apart and like consumed and twisted, and they're just finding them. And there's no rational explanation for what it could be. And then him and the other cops are like just stunned. There's nothing in their repertoire that gives them any sort of, they're small town cops. It's like a Twin Peaks kind of situation, but like taken to that level of what in realistic life could do that. It's like that Stephen King book, The Outsider, which I haven't finished yet. I know it's a show, but I kind of lost interest after it stopped being an actual crime story and became supernatural. But I should have expected that from Stephen King. But that's sort of where that story goes, is what do normal cops do when they're faced with something? What do normal people do when they're faced with something supernatural that is impossible? How do you react? How do you stick to your regular procedures? How do you stick to what you know? How do you face the horror of an abstract supernatural situation? That was really interesting. All the themes in the first half of the movie are just dropped to deal with that, and I was totally fine with it. I had a couple suggestions, like possibly just turning the Carrie Russell and Jesse Plemons character into a single character, perhaps a cop who was abused as a kid, who is sort of like a Batman-y, looking to right the wrongs of their childhood situation. And Fargo, the cop in Fargo, who's just kind of a whip-smart, intelligent cop who's investigating the situation and is like just sort of like increasingly appalled by the horror and lack of humanity they find. And then they can get involved with this kid and see the systems of abuse. I mean, the kid's running around and I think it's like trapping animals to feed to his parents or to his dad. I mean, there's plenty of setup for that. I think they just really wanted the sensitive, abused teacher so to relate to the kid. And I guess it does come back later in the end, but the most interesting chunk was dealing with that cop angle. You see, I think they did have a pretty interesting setup story with the cop hunting the Wendigo. I really liked it, but then they have to stuff an A24 abuse allegory into the film on top of it, and it's not well written enough to handle an A24 story. The direction was actually really good, especially the cinematography. That was all really good. It could have worked. The writing, however, it feels like a couple movies pushed together, and the writing in general is not that great. There's some lines that really bothered me. like there's a line where Carrie Russell is looking at the kids' drawings, and Todd, I forget, Jesse Plemons, he walks up. Jesse Plemons is her brother. He walks up, and she's like living in his house, or their childhood house. They're both living in. I don't know the situation, but he walks up and like sees the drawings, like the kids like horrible like black crayon scribble, the ring drawings, and he looks over at it and he's like, "That the kind of stuff you taught in California? That's not gonna fly here." That's. It's like, how is that his first reaction to seeing a horrible child's drawing? Like, you teaching that? You're teaching scary child drawings? Not in old Oregon, let me tell you. We have conservative values here. We don't believe in scary, creepy pasta drawings here. We only like down-home Peter Rabbit storybooks. Like, of course that's not what she's teaching. How do you think that for a second? There was another line where they find the first like mangled body or something. Jesse Plemons is telling Carrie Russell about it. Carrie Russell says, he like recounts the horror murder, and she goes, "Jesus." I think Jesse Plemons goes, "From what he told me, it sounds like Jesus wasn't anywhere to be found." Like it was like a stinger for a bad cop procedural. The kids' dialogue, I swear, I feel like when you get to a certain age, the part of your brain that's able to remember what childhood sounded like in terms of what children said really just dies off. There was a time where the kid, he I forget the context, but he walks up and he goes, "What's going on here?" He's like 7. What is going on here? Like, that is not something a kid would say when like someone's messing with their stuff. He's like panicked and he's like, "What is going on here?" And he's got this weird adult way of talking, and in the beginning, you know, it kind of works because he's a creepy, sinister kid, like something's up with him. Anyways, we're building up this creepy, supernatural horror mixed with emotional allegory story, and it ends in the monster just attacks them and beats them up, and then they have to beat him up back. And guns don't work. So I think the Native American cop tells them they have to kill the heart. You have to stab the heart or something, which is a big glowy spot in the chest, like it actually glows. So there's no confusion about when Carrie Russell finally stabs him. And honestly, I liked this part too. It was, you know, not like smart, but it was just a viscerally engaging monster versus people fight. And I don't know, I wish the movie would have just stuck with that. Give the main character a little more personal motivation in terms of the supernatural element. Maybe make him an atheist or someone that doesn't believe in ghosts or whatever. Just give them that amount of personal stakes in it, and then create an investigation cop story about people trying to find this monster. Currently, there's just a bit too many different perspectives. You've got the teacher perspective, the cop's perspective, and then you have the kid's perspective, and then occasionally you even have like the perspective of the monster. And like, so for example, there's one scene towards the end where the monster and Jesse Plemons have a fight. There's just a big fight and it's intense, and then Jesse Plemons gets knocked out and the shed that he's in gets banged up, and you see the whole fight go down and Jesse Plemons is knocked out in there. Then later, Carrie Russell is coming towards the shed from the house, and it's this really great scene where it's like all misty behind her, and there's this like red and blue light coming from the cop car, and he's just like slowly walking up, and it's like really intense. She's walking up to the shed, but we already know what she's gonna find. Like, the audience itself was with Jesse Plemons and the monster in that room 5 minutes ago. We know she's gonna find Jesse Plemons laying on the floor, and it's not gonna be like particularly intense or engaging in any way. So that's what happens. You find the body on the floor. And she's like, "Oh my God, Jesse Plemons." And then she goes and fights the monster. So then Kara Russell goes in, they have a little fight. I think there was something that tied, like, oh, she's not just fighting the monster, she's fighting her memories of abuse from her father, and she's hiding from him like how she used to hide from her father, and then she stabs him like how she wanted to stab her father. And it just did not feel earned. It feels like touched upon, forgotten, and then brought back up. But, you know, if you take all that stuff kind of out of it and you just make it like a Terminator sort of like person versus incredible monster, it would have been engaging enough to be like, that's an okay horror movie. I think that's the thing. Tone, theme, staying focused, and all the elements are there, they're just not put in the right spots. But that's the hard part, really, is making sure that your movie keeps a consistent tone, a consistent theme. So, you know, part of me wants to say, oh, it's a failed A24 film, but really, I think it's a decent monster movie, a potentially good monster movie, ruined by trying to stuff an A24 movie into it. I think it's a really good case of what your theme means for your movie, and it does matter, because it did take away from the experience. And the direction is good. The direction itself is fine. It really comes down to the script. There's some really good stuff. Like, there's a scene where Carrie Russell almost buys booze like twice, and it's really simple. She's in line, and she just looks at the booze for just a second longer than a normal person would, and then she just kind of steps forward and moves on. Like, you got it from that. I like that sort of like just simple guided visuals direction. It does that a lot. There's a lot of good little stuff that is just well directed scenes. It's directed by the guy that made Hostiles, who, again, I thought was another great example of a movie with a sort of disjointed, awkward story with excellent direction that was just like a couple of tweaks away from really engaging me. Also, he directed Crazy Heart and Out of the Furnace, which I'm just gonna put on the screen right now, have like almost the exact same poster. That's weird. Yeah, he directed those. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Antlers. Maybe don't watch it. I'm sure there's different if you want a good, like, heavily themed allegorical horror movie, you can watch like The Babadook or like Hereditary. But if you want just like a fun, good monster movie with an interesting villain, Oculus would be good. You could totally watch Oculus. It's a great movie about an evil mirror, and it's all psychological and crazy, and they don't know how to deal with it. But yeah, that's that. We can move on from that now. 5 out of 10, I guess. It's not great. It's not good. It's not good, but I think it has all of the building blocks of being something great. It just needed quite a few changes. I switched to ice water because my mouth got dry, and I have to edit this later, and when I hear my mouth noises, I want to die. Moving on now to Midnight Mass, which is a recent Netflix, I guess you'd call it horror. It's a horror show. It is not particularly scary. It is more fascinating and interesting and beautifully well written and super enjoyable to watch. And it's just so. Remember in the Antlers review? Remember my Antlers review? Remember when that happened? I mentioned how having too many themes might be a bad thing. I think that's not necessarily true all the time, because Midnight Mass is so packed with theme, but it's all so well motivated. You know, it might just be that this is like a 7-hour show. It's like a 7-hour long single narrative. You can have a lot more themes fleshed out. There's so much going on. So again, I really don't want to spoil this for anyone. I really want you to go in blind, because it's such a beautiful experience. By the end of episode 3, you will know what's going on. But in the meantime, there's amazing, such well-written characters, wonderfully acted. So, number one, it's beautifully shot. Just I'm finding the more and more I do reviews, like the more I enjoy like something that's just gorgeous. It's gorgeously shot. beautiful. It's fucking. I love good cinematography. The whole show takes place on a small fishing island. It's not really. I don't think it really said exactly where it is, but it's, it's Nowheresville, America. It's a potential representative for any town ever, and a microcosm of humanity itself, if you wanted to get as pretentious as possible. And on this small fishing village, there is just so much detail because it is slightly decrepit. Many people have left the island after a few years of bad economics. People are leaving the island. No one's interested in living there anymore. The buildings and the environments are all sort of like falling apart and messy, and all the grass is overgrown, and this cinematography and production design just like creates these beautiful shots of what really does look like a small town sort of returning to nature. So everything just looks gorgeous from beginning to end. A lot of really wide, pretty shots, especially in the beginning. I think later on you get more like focused character visuals because you're in the throes of such amazing acting performances. You want more close-ups, but in the beginning, those first 3 hours where you don't really know what's going on, you are given this. I guess there is a lot it has there's a lot it has in common with Antlers, because it is the same type of thing where you don't really recognize what's going on for the first chunk of the story, except when you do learn, it's about halfway through. It recontextualizes everything, and it wasn't like the first 3 hours were boring. It was just it was a drama about characters who are going through troubling times. Then more elements get added, and the story really takes off into what it's really about. The whole show reminds me a lot of Pathologic 2, which is a video game from 2019 that I still stand by and saying is my favorite piece of media. It is a video game. I put 80 hours into it. To me, Pathologic 2 is my favorite thing. But Pathologic 2, again, takes place in a remote, small town. Crazy stuff starts happening, and so much about humanity and life and ethics and morals are explored. Pathologic 2 is so deep and so wonderful. I'll probably get into that at a different time, but Midnight Mass deals with themes of our relationship with religion, our relationship with our fears about mortality, and the way a community handles itself, the way a mob begins, the way we're able to give ourselves up to anything that has a good answer. And ultimately, I'm going to stop there and say it's wonderfully well written, beautifully directed, incredibly beautifully shot, super smart, just incredibly engaging, fun to watch. It's a bit slow in the beginning especially, and there's a lot of long monologues. There's a general theatrical feel to it, and the twist isn't necessarily impossible to guess if you kind of like pay attention to certain production details. But there is a wonderful twist that changes everything and will bring you to another plane of storytelling that you didn't realize you were going to get to. But the first 3 hours are a decent drama, a great drama, a really good drama, a really interesting story unfolding about these people. Additional elements come, and it elevates it to being something that I'm going to remember and talk about forever. It's a great show. I really recommend it. Go watch it. Okay? For those that have already seen it or are open to spoilers, you can stick around. So I didn't take any notes about Midnight Mass. Typically when I'm watching something that I intend to review, I'm going to take a lot of notes and sort of jot down everything I'm thinking so that I can look at it later and sort of like gather my thoughts. I didn't do that for this. I just watched it and got hooked and engaged, and man. So it's for the twist, it is a vampire movie or show. It's a vampire show. And it is slightly hinted that it might be a space vampire show. But you don't get that because you don't get that until later, because everything this alien race, we'll just call them aliens because I think it's a little easier to talk about when you use the word aliens. These aliens are what the Bible has written as angels. Everything that we understand about angels, them coming down from the sky, them giving us eternal life, us feeding on their blood, it all directly correlates with a predatory vampire alien species. And you say that out loud and it sounds really silly. It sounds like a really silly, campy thing. But you give that concept to people that are so spiritually and emotionally connected to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And you have people who are willing to lay down their lives, give everything, not question impossible miracles, all in service of this predatory force. And there is some hinting in the beginning with the Catholic Church. The main character for the first couple episodes, his entire mission statement is criticism of the church. He says you see it all over the country. You see small towns all beaten down with giant, beautiful churches. It is a succubus. It is a malicious feeding force. It's a force that comes and sucks resources and value from everywhere. There is that direct allegory to religion itself being a predatory force and it taking everything from everyone. Only when you deal with it in such literal terms as what we're seeing in Midnight Mass are we able to sort of see how bad that is. We're addicted to the blood of someone, of something that only wants us for feed. And ultimately, the Catholic Church is sort of doing that with feeding off of the work of so many people untaxed and them giving everything, falling at their knees to worship and beg and pray for the kindness of the church. So you have that element, but then you have the more personal, emotional element of people's personal attachment to these things. The view of what's going to happen after we die, the fear of death itself, the anxiety of uncertainty. One of my favorite characters in the show, who is essentially the main bad guy of the show, would be that the one vampire alien angel that we're dealing with. But in terms of the antagonist of the entire story, you could say it is the religious woman. I forget her name, but the woman, we'll call her Anne. What is her fucking name? Mabel? Whatever. She is totally motivated by bad faith. She is 100% given herself to the church for the belief in its power it gives an individual. The belief that her standing with the church makes her above everyone else, and that she deserves that power because she has given herself over to it so intensely. So when the vampire comes, she questions nothing. It's an act of God. However, that the faith is not in God's ability to take care of her. It's not in her it's not in her belief that God is the savior and that God will care for them. It is her faith in the fact that this is the correct team to be on. And that's made incredibly clear by her complete abandonment of morals towards the end. And in the very last scene that she's in before she dies, you see her try to bury herself in the sand to avoid the sunlight because she knows it'll kill her, and you see she's so afraid. She does not believe that she is going to heaven. She does not believe there's life after death in a deep sense. I mean, she does not believe in eternal life. So all of her faith had nothing to do with her actual faith in God, in the religion, in the afterlife, in the positive aspects of religious faith. It had all to do with power and self-interest. So, what a perfect little representative for the cynicism behind churches. You have this main character, this atheist, who I think it was so smart and brave and cool to have him die when he died. The scene where they go and row out into the middle of the ocean, and he just, you don't really know what his intentions are. You can't really pinpoint what his goals for that scene are going to be. You really just see someone who's kind of being weird and strange, and you think maybe he's going to attack her, maybe he's going to turn her, and then the sun starts to set, and your sun starts to rise, and you're like, oh fuck, oh my god, what a cool character. What an interesting way to immediately get someone to understand and believe what you're saying. Like, hey, there's vampires, I'm a vampire now. Get the fuck out of here. I rowed this boat most of the way. Row it home, row it out, get free. All of the character deaths that are the good characters are so interesting and well connected to their lot in life. I loved the main girl, her death scene, or her the scene when she's being attacked by the angel and she's being eaten, and how it's so distracted by the feed that he's unable to notice that she's like slowly slitting his wings so that he can't fly. And basically that whole team's decision, like, okay, we're probably all gonna die, we're not gonna make it out of here, but we need to make sure that this doesn't spread. We need to make sure that the human race isn't murdered. Like, that's such an act of morality. That's such a personal act of, okay, we can't let this happen to everyone. We all might die, but we're gonna save everyone. They're literally dying for mankind. It fits so well with the religious theme, self-sacrifice for the greater good. I mean, isn't that what civilization and, religion and so many of the things that we hold as the highest moral virtues are supposed to be about? So these characters do that, and they don't do that for any ulterior meaning or ulterior motive or personal gain. They do it, they sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And there's so many different elements in the show that do that fit in with that fit in with itself. That's why I like Pathologic so much. There's so many things that tie back in with the rest of the story. It's like this perfect tapestry of complicated pattern and moving part that all comes back in. There's no loose ends, no threads of theme or concept or idea that are left unexplored or not paid off, and there's nothing just thrown in there. It's all so purposeful. It's a story about humanity, sacrifice, faith, religion, and there's a million different ways to explore that, and it seems to explore so many with so many different interesting characters while staying so focused, staying so perfect. It feels like a perfect thing, and I love every second of it. I can't wait to watch it again. I really don't even want to talk about it too much because there's so many little details that I could touch upon, but I think that it's really best experienced for yourself. So I've ruined, if you stuck around because you're bad with directions and you don't want to be told what to do, and I get it. I do that shit all the time. I have no interest in Midnight Mass. Plus, I don't know. Young Panda doesn't fucking know what I like. If you did stick around and you watched this part of it anyway, watch me discuss it, like, please, I think you should still watch it. The twist made for a very special viewing, but I think I had already heard the term vampire before I watched it, so I wasn't really all that shocked. But it was impressive to see the way it unfolded. I didn't mention, anything about the father or anything. Yeah, I think I'll stop here. I think I'll leave the details out. That's ultimately the big twist. That's ultimately the main themes, and that's why I like it. So there's your review. I hope you have yourself a beautiful week. Please go watch Midnight Mass. You don't have to watch Antlers. I've got some unpacking to do, and I'm gonna have this house nice and set up. So thank you all for sticking around, and I will see you next time on Morning Coffee with the Young Panda.